Welcome into another off-season edition of Spits and Suds. We're so glad you can join us today. We have an awesome Spits and Suds one-timer because Al Montoya is the director of community outreach for the Dallas Stars, played for 6 NHL teams over a span of 9 years. Heck of a career we'll jump into. Al is the first Cuban American to play in the NHL, and he joins us today from the Stars offices. How are you, Al?
I'm doing great. An absolute pleasure to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so no off season for Al when it comes to community outreach, right? I mean, it's continuing to evolve for you, I guess.
Well, that's exactly it, and I think that's the bonus, the luxury that this is. It's, during the season you see the guys put in the work, our office puts in the work, but we also get to tell great stories in the summertime in the stuff that we're doing here in the community, the social impact. It's a lot of fun.
Has you went through your job duties when you were hired? Is part of those job duties being forced by Marty Turco to play any Stars alumni games?
That's awesome. You know what? When I first showed up here, I had taken a hiatus from hockey, believe it or not, after 35 years, 38 years on the ice. And I finally got back into it. I don't know if you know much about the Big Heart tournament that the alumni put on here. It's a fantastic tournament.
Yeah.
We get all kind of cool celebrities that come back. A couple years ago, the great one, number 99, Wayne Gretzky, came through. So at that point, I started to come back into hockey, but I was that guy that wouldn't play goalie anymore, right? Go figure, a goalie that doesn't want to play goalie anymore. But I wanted to play forward, but I was wearing my goalie skates. And it was Marty that convinced me and pushed me and prodded and got me to switch. And today, I'll tell you what, I'm a fully converted defenseman.
Are you really? Now,
Yes,
is that an
yes.
offensive defenseman? Are you like shut down physical defenseman?
That's a great question. If I had the lungs that I did from back in the day, I'd probably be a little bit more offensive.
Yeah.
It still burns to be on the ice when someone scores. So I like to think I'm more of a shutdown guy.
Okay.
And Bob Bass and these guys like to say that, I've got these 10, size 15 shoe that really help stop the lanes.
Have you played with Craig Ludwig yet? Who's one of my partners on this podcast?
Yes, I have. And Luds has been great to me. He's taken it easy on me. And you know what? There's times you got to really pick up your head because like he did back in the day, he could put you through the wall, and it's not every day you pick up your head and you're about to run into a wall and you're grateful that you don't.
The best way he describes playing in the alumni games is he's a stay-at-home defenseman, not because he wants to, he just can't move.
It does. You know what's really special about those guys? Even though they're going to say that they can't move, they don't move. They move the puck so well. They drop the puck. They know where guys are. The chemistry, believe it or not, it's still there, and it is really a sight to see.
Yeah. Fids is really good at those alumni situations too.
Well, you mentioned Fids. Fids was just in my office. He's a great alumni and a great friend here. And the last time I played in that Big Heart, I believe Kari Lehtinen had enough as goalie. So it was Vern Fiddler who decided that he was going to jump in the net. And you got to love those moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So you just came back from the NHL draft in Vegas, where you were part of some very interesting meetings. As the draft happened, 12 players of color were selected in this year's NHL draft. Tell me about the meetings and the purpose of the meetings that you went into.
Yeah, you know what? When I first retired, I knew I wanted to get back in the game of hockey, right? I knew I wanted to be a part of this, grow this game, the game that gave me so much. And it really started with a conversation at the NHL and with the commissioner is using my platform, first Cuban American, first Spanish speaking player to grow, and let's help grow this game. And from that, certain conversations led to another, and this coalition was formed of past and present players to really, from all walks of life, to grow the game and to advise to the executives and the leadership and to owners and how we can do that. And, we went from having calls on Zoom to last year was our first in-person meeting at last year's draft. And here we are a few weeks ago at the NHL draft in Vegas. And we're seeing the game grow. We're seeing kids from all walks of life playing the game that we all love to see and watch and play. And I think it's good for the game. The more people play, we talk about this being a global game, right? And the more that people play, the more that they see that there's an option that they can see themselves in the game, whether it's through us, through players represented. I think it's huge, and it's exciting for us. And we, in those meetings, we talk about certain initiatives that we want to launch or certain ideas that we want to go forward. And, for myself, I know we'll get into it, but I was able to take a part of a grant that through this coalition down to Mexico City and help connect that gap there. Very, very cool stuff.
Yeah. How specifically did you get involved with the Stars organization? Because your history with Texas includes, playing-wise, the Texas Tornadoes and the San Antonio Rampage.
You know what? I was thinking about that the other night. Not many people know that. So I've spent a lot of time in Texas, believe it or not, playing hockey. Never played for the Stars, but
right.
So, like I said, I when I first retired, I wanted to get back in the game. I went from being this commodity, right? Drafted 6th overall. You go through the season, you become a free agent, you get phone calls. But when you stop playing, you're an alumni, right? And who do you know and how do you network? So, like I said, I started this conversation with the deputy commissioner, and he took my call, and with Bill Daly, and it was about growing the game and making a measurable difference, right? So I spent 2 years, I want to say 2019 to 2021, really talking to teams, presidents, owners, to see what would make the best fit. And for me, once I spoke to the president here, Brad Alberts, and the owner, Tom Glardy, our visions aligned, and we were on the same page. And I took a leap of faith. Sure, it helped having Marty Turco here, myself being a former Wolverine, and he was the guy that I looked up to. And so we took a leap of faith, moved my kids down here and my family, and we haven't looked back.
I mean, you were used to the heat, though, playing in those years in San Antonio.
You know what? I remember getting traded from, I think I was with the Rangers team, but I was in Hartford in the minors. I got traded from Hartford to San Antonio, Phoenix, San Antonio, and staying in the hotel in April. We're in playoffs, and I'm in a suit, and I couldn't believe the heat. So yes, I am familiar with it. It's a different world. It's a different game when you play in heat like that. But we're happy to be back, and we're enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to talk about the Texas Tornado for a second. There's something about goaltenders and the Texas Tornado with you and Ben Bishop now working for the same organization. It was interesting also looking at your career. You said not a lot of people know that. If I threw out the name to you, Dylan Reese, do you remember Dylan?
Dylan Reese is one of my best friends.
No way.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Your Pats are amazing. And this is the kind of deep dives we do randomly on Spits and Suds because, you guys both played for the Texas Tornado. And because I was looking how many NHLers from that great Texas Tornado team went on. There were only 3 of you that went on to play in the NHL. And Dylan and you were 2 of them. And so then Dylan ends up going to Harvard. You end up going to Michigan. But then you cross paths again with the Hartford Wolfpack, and then you cross paths again with the New York Islanders.
That's right. And I think we crossed paths again in San Antonio.
Yes, you did. That's amazing.
Yes, yeah.
And I was thinking to myself before this interview, Al, I was like, man, what if they hate each other? That would, and I'm bringing this up.
He was one of my favorite, and we really hit it off. We get to see him once a year. We're lucky. He's the New York Islanders do a great job of taking care of their alumni. They fly our family, or they bring our families in once a year to celebrate. And I get to see Dylan. Now he has a wife and 2 kids. And it's just one of my favorites. He lived with us in Long Island when he was up and down. And I can't say enough great things about the guy.
When you talk about community outreach, obviously, I pulled this according to a report in 2021 and 2022. Just over 84% of the NHL's employees are white, 4% are Asian, 3% are black or African American, another 3% Hispanic, Latino, less than 1% indigenous. And it also states the disparity is also reflected in the league's fellowship program and human resources, with both being nearly 70% white. I do find it interesting and stick tap to the stars because we've mentioned it on this podcast. One of the things that we've seen tremendous growth in here in DFW is the growth of women's hockey with the Stars Development Program. And we just saw two of those players, Hannah Bilka, get drafted by Boston, and Allison Simpson out of Colgate being drafted by New York of the PWHL. So, you know, it's kind of interesting to see like the growth in DFW with the women's game too.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you're speaking of the diversity report that the NHL released for the first time ever. And I'm going to quote Kim Davis here, who is the EVP at the NHL and really heads up, started our coalition and is a phenomenal leader there. And she said we didn't release these stats or data to surprise anybody or shock ourselves. It was really to set a bar, right? And it's not like hockey was ever excluding anybody, but we're in a day and age that we want to set a bar for ourselves to see where we'll be in 5 years, to see what those numbers will look like in 10 years. And that's exactly it. So it's gone are the days, Gavin, where you could say, like, come to us. We've got a fantastic game. You'll love it when you get here. Now we're going into these communities. We're connecting with people. We're connecting with, leaders in these communities and building trust. And that's exactly it. So that when kids or families come to games, that they feel safe and they feel that the Dallas Stars are part of their community. And that's exactly it. And then you talk about the game of women's hockey. People, they're not minority. Women aren't minority, right? They're 51% of the population. Right. So, but in this game, they're underrepresented. And for us, that's an easy driver, an easy way to grow. And I think that's a big reason why I moved down here, right? And why I joined the Stars is because they believed in growth, and they believed in, I do it because I know it's the right thing to do. And at the same time, I know it'll lead to growth. And I'm very proud to call myself a Dallas Star.
One of the things that we say on Spits and Suds is a lot of times we'll stop down in the middle. And I just talked to Sean Shapiro, and we were talking about the 35-year-old plus bonus structure. And I said, okay, let's explain that, Sean. And because we want to grow the great game. And sometimes we oversimplify it. So I never want anyone to feel like they're not included in the conversation. So if I throw out a term, I'll try to take a step back when I remember and explain that term. And one of the many reasons I was excited to interview you, Al, was I was contacted on a direct message through Twitter from a Hispanic male and said, Gavin, you say this on the program, and I cannot talk to my Hispanic friends about this game because they don't follow it, and I don't want to be embarrassed. Can you help me? I don't know much about this game, but it seems really cool. And throughout the year, I was explaining face-offs, icing, and I noticed the tweets came more often to me, and it was exciting, and it just made me feel so good, Al. And I just wondered, like, how many more are out there that want to embrace the game but don't want to feel silly by asking those questions?
That's a great point. And you and I both know what a great game it is. What a great game it is live. And it's a family event. It's something that, for me, I always talk about it was my equalizer, right? I grew up in a Spanish household. My mom was a refugee. She came from Cuba, fleeing communism when she was 11 years old. And in the house was Spanish, but when you stepped outside, it was English. And then when I got to the rink and threw that helmet on, it didn't matter what language you spoke.
Right.
You got to play hockey, right? And that's what we're trying to deliver. Like it's a global game. You think about how this game continues to grow. I think in the 80s, it was just a North American game, right? There was concern that if we take this game overseas, it's, you're going to change it. You're going to make the game soft. Lo and behold, the game only got better.
Yeah. That's absolutely
I think it's going to continue to do that,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it just reminded me there's a place, and I don't mind plugging them, right by my house in East Dallas called the Havana Cafe and the Mojito Bar. Have you been there?
I've been, come on. So the way I do my like cultural grounding, the way that's what I call it. Whenever I go to a new city, whenever I would get traded, whenever I would sign with a new team, I would always go to a Cuban coffee shop, a Cuban restaurant. When I first signed with the Rangers, it was Victor's Cafe right off Broadway there. Like that was the refuge. That was like my grandparents went there on their honeymoon from Cuba. So for me, right when I got to Dallas, I found there's like three or four, and Havana Cafe was one of them.
Oh, my good. They have proudly accepted this gringo on the dance floor, sir.
I love it.
Just letting you know. It's just, I love the Cubano passion. Right? I can't perfect a plantain in the kitchen. I'm trying really hard. But, yeah, great food. And just, I love their passion as far as the dancing and the music. It really is a amazing cultural experience. Okay, so after the Texas tornado, you go on and you are just playing really well in Michigan. What made you decide to go to University of Michigan? I know it's a very historic program. Marty Turco went there as well.
Yeah.
Why Michigan?
I'm going to wind it back a little bit if it's all right.
Yeah.
So the way I ended up at the Texas tornado, I ended up there as a 15-year-old. And that's not normal, right? You think of juniors, you think of the North American League. It's an under 20 league. In eighth grade, this game asks a lot for you of kids, right? And I was in eighth grade. I was playing AAA hockey for the Chicago Young Americans, and we were in the Michigan National Hockey League. So you can imagine what my life was like. Every weekend, I was in the car driving up to Michigan to play hockey. It's a lot. So at 13 years old, I said to my mom, I'm done with this. I've been exhausted. I'm sitting, the team pulls me in. It's 16 dads. They pull me in and sit me down at a conference table. And they said, Al, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. I'm either 12 or 13 years old. And they're like, you have the chance to go the furthest. And I just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm exhausted. My brother ended up playing football at the Naval Academy. He's 4 years older than me. I said, I just want to go to school. I want to play football. I want to be a kid. And that's it. So I quit hockey for a year. And I looked up to my brother. When I became a freshman, he graduated. He went to the Naval Academy, and his teammate was a running back for University of Wisconsin, who I admired, right? As an athlete, I admired him. And I got lost that year, and my sophomore year. After my freshman year, I played football. I played high school hockey. If you know anything about college or high school hockey in Chicago, there's not much there. Mm-hmm. Sophomore season, I decided to go back to high school, and my brother's friend comes back for homecoming, and he's like, "What are you still doing here?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I figured you'd be gone by now." It was September. I'll never forget it. And I made a phone call. All the AAA teams were booked up. So I made a phone call. Someone made a phone call for me. And lo and behold, I ended up here as a 15-year-old because someone was willing to give me a chance. Granted, I was good, right? I was a top-end goalie, and I ended up here. And I decided, hockey's what I want to do for the rest of my life, or as long as I could. And that's how I ended up at the Texas Tornado as a 15-year-old.
Wow. And you went to school in Frisco with the host family?
No, the team originally was in North Richland Hills.
Yes, right.
So okay. I was living in Keller, and I went to Fossil Ridge High School.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That must have been quite the culture shock.
It was a lot. You know what? I was blessed that my mom believed in me. My mom believed in me. I don't know how many 15-year-olds can turn to their parents and say, this is what I want to do. I want to leave home and go play. But she knew I was driven. I was responsible. I was maturing. I was growing. But she didn't hold me back. And I thank her every day for it.
Has Ben Bishop ever told you that he dropped the mitts for the Texas Tornado?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think I was actually at that game.
A forwarder or a goalie?
Goalie.
No way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would say, I was watching a video of one Rick DiPietro and Al Montoya going at it as well. The New York Ranger versus the New York Islanders. And DiPietro got a little nasty with some players, and all of a sudden, Mr. Montoya, that was pretty fast skating down the ice to get involved.
There's a story behind that one, too.
All right,
Listen to this one. So it's preseason. I'm finally getting my first shot. Like, I think that was year 2 with the Rangers. And I'm like, I got my feet wet the year before. I'm finally going to play my first preseason game. Do you remember the Chris Simon, Ryan Hallwig incident?
Oh, yes. Ooh.
Where Chris Simon's two-handed Hallwig across the face and received the longest suspension? It was like
Yes.
45 games, something silly. So that was at the end of the previous season. But there was a loophole. He was still going to be suspended for the beginning of that season, but there was a loophole that he could play in preseason games. So go figure. The Islanders dressed Chris Simon, and the Rangers dressed Ryan Hallwig. Ricky, after one period or two, Ricky lets in a couple soft ones, and he's like, enough's enough. I'm going to jump on the back of Ryan Hallwig's back. So I did what I had to do. It wasn't pretty, but I had to get down there and even up the numbers. And I love it that you're bringing it up, because my daughter and my 11-year-old Camila, we were reminiscing last night, and she wanted to hear some stories. And it's not always the saves that you're making, but it's the funny ones that they get good chuckles at.
Have you guys talked since about that?
Deep Trail?
Yeah. You guys keep in touch?
got traded. So when I got traded to the Islanders, I got traded because he had gotten hit by Brent Johnson, I believe. And he went out down and out. I don't know if we ever talked about it.
Okay.
But he did throw me a little sucker punch at the bottom of that.
He did. Too. He did at the end. He did. You guys went down, and he came back up. Yeah.
Well, there's no need.
All right, let's go to 2004. Absolutely amazing accomplishment. You were part of a USA team that took home their first ever World Junior Gold in Finland. I always ask people this. What's it like donning that USA sweater as a guy whose mother fought to come here, and immigrant parents, and growing up in Chicago, and now you look down and you have USA across your chest?
You're giving me chills as you say it. You're putting me in the spot. Like, I'm in Helsinki. We're down going into the third period. There is no better feeling. I mean, right, we all came from somewhere else to get to this country, and this country, for the dream, the American dream. And I think that's the fire and passion that allowed, I think of my grandparents that came to this country, leaving everything behind for these grandkids that they never met. My mother, the ultimate goal, to stand on that red line or that blue line after you beat Team Canada in Finland with Team USA for the first gold medal ever, and you see the flag go up, and they start playing the national anthem. I mean, there is no better feeling. Getting drafted 6th overall, wonderful. Playing as a 17-year-old at University of Michigan, awesome. But being able to put that sweater on and represent your country, and in a trailblazer, in a sense, there was no better feeling.
Is this a memory that you guys still talk about today? Obviously, you were around the Stars last year, and Ryan Suter was a part, and he was a part of that as well. Do you guys reminisce?
You know what? Any chance you get, it's funny. I've got a few things in my office, and one of them is that team photo of us winning that tournament. And we met at the World Trade or the Freedom Tower. It was the memorial in the ground. Mike Eves, our coach, an absolute amazing person, an amazing coach. And then we took off and went overseas. And now I'm part of Congress at USA Hockey. So you see familiar faces, you see coaches, and it brings you back. Any chance you get, it brings you back. And we do reminisce, and we do hit it off. And like I said, like it was yesterday. So it's something that once Christmas rolls around and that tournament starts up over again, you get reminded of it.
I mean, that team was beasts. Obviously, you were terrific in net, but mentioned Suits, then Zach Parise, who went on to win the highest honors there. You just going down. Ryan Kessler was a part of that team.
Yep.
James Wisniewski was a part of that team.
Yep.
It's just, you guys were stacked with NHLers. Patrick Eaves was part of that team, former star. Matt Hunwick, Matt Carl.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, wow. And so
and
you guys
they
are.
Put you,
sorry, go.
I know. I'm saying they put you in that tournament, and they say, here's your Team USA. They're the favorite, but you're never the favorite, especially when you haven't won one, right? And you're playing against Team Canada. So you can put this ball on our court, and you could say we're the favorite, but we had to get through Canada, and then until we did, we, in our eyes, we were the underdog, and we were fortunate that Mike Eaves and USA Hockey had put this program, that national team development program together, and allowed us to grow together. And I wasn't even supposed to be the guy that year, right? I'm born in '85, so that was the '84 team. Jimmy Howard was playing at Maine that year, and he stepped on a puck.
Oh,
probably November, and he was done. So he couldn't go. So I knew it was my net.
I know there's a lot of pressure when you're playing for Team USA, and you ended up after this playing for Team USA a lot in your career. Did you guys have fun in Finland? I mean, you won the gold, but I mean, was it all business? I mean, because for many of you, I would think it's your first time really playing outside of the country internationally.
Yeah. You know what? We put in work, and it wasn't the 1 week or 2 weeks that we were there. I joined the national, they built that national team development program in Ann Arbor for the reason of winning that gold in developing our Olympic team and all those great things. But when you're 16 years old and you walk into that development program, you understand that you're playing colleges or you're playing under 20 teams, and you're getting beat up, but the goal is to win these international tournaments. So we put the work in for years. And then, up until that point, once that banner's raised up, we had a blast. We got a chance to celebrate. And you're celebrating with guys, like I said, it wasn't a 2-week tournament for us. It was a 3-4 year tournament that we had been preparing for. So you're in the trenches with these guys, and to be able to do it with players that you played with for the last 2-3 years, there's really no words for it.
When you got drafted high, as you mentioned, 6th overall, high expectations. You're going to an original 6 city in New York, massive hockey base there. And it wasn't like you did anything wrong. It's just that Henrik Lundqvist came along.
Yeah, you get put. Okay, so for me, you get drafted 6th overall. You're coming out of college, and you're thinking, I should be in the NHL, but I also don't come from lineage. I don't know like a hockey family, so I don't know, other than what my agent or my advisors are telling me. I don't know the path. For me, it's all right. I'm going to go into the net. Got sent down to the minors. I'm going to play. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to play well. But for me, once I hit a certain point, it's tough to say. I needed speed. I needed someone to understand that I needed to play at a top level, but I also had to show that I could play at a top level. My game needed speed to advance. And so from that, I had to learn. There was growing pains. My body had to develop. I had to learn what it was like, coming from the University of Michigan where you were treated unbelievably, to going to play in the minors and developing and trying to figure it all on my own, essentially. I was on my own as a goaltender. You're on an island, but when you come in as this commodity, there's a lot to figure out.
Yeah. And when you were with the Wolfpack, you played in the Hartford Civic Center? Is that where they played?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Brass Bonanza.
Craig used to say when he used to go in with Montreal, it's like, you could just find us. We'd be in the mall just hanging out at the bars.
That's Hartford for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually have a lot of great whale. I grew up outside of Boston, and so I don a lot of Hartford Whalers gear. I think it's one of the coolest logos going. It's amazing how popular it's become now.
It's crazy. You would after playing there and you don't know how good you have it. You're whether you're in the NHL or the American League. I was telling someone the other day. I didn't stay. I think we spent a total of a week in a hotel for the travel standpoint
Wow.
because there's so many teams, whether it was Springfield or Worcester or
Yeah.
Providence. You're back and forth, and then lo and behold, you get traded out west, and you're like, oh my gosh, where what? This is another world. This is another game. But I enjoyed my ride. I enjoyed the Northeast. Loved playing out there. Loved the passion of the fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like playing in Canada, but maybe a little more.
And I want to give you a lot of credit because you mentioned high expectations, wanted to be in the NHL, didn't happen right away, but you fought your way back into the NHL. You get traded to the Phoenix Coyotes, and, you get there, and then you're traded again. And, then you played a few years with the Islanders, went on to Winnipeg for 2 years, so you got a nice run going. Then you went to Florida, and you backed up to me one of the great characters as we just witnessed as he raised the cup in Roberto Luongo.
Yeah, I went through this point that I remember being in San Antonio and saying, whether it was to Reese or somebody else that year in Long Island, I was like, look at this. They've gone through like 7 goalies already. I was like, that's where goalies go to die. Lo and behold, that's where I get traded to. And I said, well, this is my chance. This is my chance, and I'm not going to look back. So I made the most of it. I said, once you get there, you're not taking me out. A couple injuries here, a couple injuries there, but I wasn't going anywhere else. Put a good year in Winnipeg, which allows me to pick my spot, and my spot was Florida at the time. Going back to my heritage, it was like going back to Little Havana. That was as close as I got. I grew up, when my mom and my grandparents got off the boat, it was in Fort Lauderdale. There's a huge contingency of Cuban Americans down there. So to combine that culture, it was something special. And then you get to play with the team that I got to play with and my partner in Luongo. And we had an unreal team. We had a really good team, and we were able to swing and put it together. And it was, I had fun. I remember my first year being there, my goalie coach, Rob Tallis, and he'll even say he tried to get me to play a little bit like Luongo. If you know our games, I'm nothing like him. And the second year, he's like, Al, I'm sorry, that's gone. I want you to play like yourself and be free. And I'll remember that because it was the easiest thing. A coach wouldn't have to say that, take accountability, but he did. And it really allowed me to progress and grow. And Lou was the one beating the drum the most for me. So some very special memories, that's for sure.
Yeah, and in San Antonio, you played with another guy who just hoisted the cup, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Awesome hockey player. I mean, from a way this guy moves around, I'm like, gosh, I remember this guy. I think I played with him in Phoenix, and then I played against him in World Championships. But his shot, I'm telling you, Spitz, he could shoot the puck. And it doesn't look like his body moved, but it's going bar down. It's going right past your ear, and you're just hearing it.
Wow.
Yeah. Awesome hockey player. Where did he end up now? Is he in Toronto?
I don't know where, I'm going to have to look that up.
He's an unbelievable hockey player.
Yeah. I mean, what a career. Absolutely amazing career. With San Antonio, I actually covered you because I was covering the Houston Aeros. And I always loved the San Antonio-Houston, Texas rivalry. I always thought that, those teams, when I was covering Houston, which I still maintain should have an NHL franchise, I think it would be a great natural rivalry with Dallas. And I think that would also enable San Antonio to get a minor league team, which they so richly deserve. A lot of rich hockey history in San Antonio that no one really talks about. So that would be a great plan if I had my way. But I always thought, Al, that these, when San Antonio came to town or Texas, and you were there, it just felt like it was just a little bit more frisky, let's say.
It always was. I mean, it was a different game. I know I'm not an old timer, but it was the competitiveness. And you got to understand that was our closest trip from San Antonio. It was a 3-hour bus ride. Other than that, I mean, Austin was close, or no, then there was, I think Austin came in later, but
Yeah.
that was our closest trip. So we really, really enjoyed it. And being able to play in that arena in Houston was really cool. I think it was the Toyota Center would have been at the time where the
Yes, it
Rockets were
was.
playing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a treat to be able to play hockey in Texas. I know you don't get to pinch yourself quite often, and really embrace the moment. And that's what I tell guys now when I see them is just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ups and downs as much as you can.
Do you think it's because I always tell people, like, if you're going down to Cedar Park, please catch a Texas Stars game, because
Right.
even if you're like cover or follow the game of hockey, you don't notice much of a difference. The biggest difference that I've noticed is just simple consistency. And when that player can dial their game in on a more consistent basis, and my example when I was in Houston was Anton Hudobin, who was a guy who was in the minors, and one game it would be like, wow, this guy, why isn't he in the NHL? And he eventually went on to a nice career in the NHL. Would you agree that it's mostly just consistency?
100%. You have to be reliable. You look at how you enter the National Hockey League, and as a forward, it's the easiest path. I don't even want to call it easy, but it's the first one, right? Because behind them, there's the defenseman to cover your mistakes, and then the goalies cover the defenseman mistakes. But as a goaltender, you really can't have mistakes, right? And that consistency. But at the same time, Spitz, I would even say the predictability from the American League to the NHL makes the game simpler. So in an American League game, the game can get out of control, be unpredictable. Guys can make different kind of plays, but when you get to the NHL, it's more predictable. The speed is faster, and it's a more north-south game, which might make it easier for a goaltender or more simple. But you got to show that you can do it in the American League if that's where you start. And that was my struggle. And that was, I think a lot of guys struggle, is that how do you get ready for a game? How do you play 4 and 5? How do you travel from one bus? I remember playing in San Antonio against Chicago Friday night. Saturday, you wake up at 6 a.m. for the 6 a.m. flight. You fly to O'Hare, and then you take a bus to Grand Rapids, and you're playing that night. So how do you tie that in and eliminate all the distractions that allow you to be the player that you are? Because I always said to myself, if I was to jump on the ice today and play with my friends and have fun, I could do it at any given moment.
Wow. Well, in your years in Montreal, Craig and I were talking on this podcast, and we were talking about Logan Stankoven, and Craig said, guess who Logan Stankoven reminds me of? And I just said, to me, Craig, Brendan Gallagher. And you played 2 years with Brendan Gallagher. Do you see that as well? Just that water bug going around the ice, and it's absolutely amazing Brendan Gallagher is still playing.
It is unbelievable. I mean, no knock to Gally. Stankoven's got more talent.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
But Gally was a heck of a player that could produce, that could kill penalties, that still does. But I look at what Stankoven did last year, and always on the right side of the play, always able to create something from nothing. Not the biggest guy, as we know, but he's got that tenacity, and he doesn't shy away from the game.
In your stomps, highest pressure, would it be Montreal because of they're just so focused on the game? Craig said it was tough to go out to dinner at times without you being noticed. But you played in two pretty high-profile Canadian cities that love their players, in Winnipeg as well as Montreal. Did you feel as though that was you mentioned playing on the East Coast, and it was just like Canada. What was it like playing in Montreal?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is that, Montreal's tough. But I went in there my first year, and I think we started the season 10-0. And you can imagine how that must have felt. And you can imagine how the city rallied around us. And we were, I think we won our division that year. And then the second year, you didn't want to leave your house because we weren't very good. But anytime you're playing in the National Hockey League, especially as a goaltender, until you establish yourself everywhere you played, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be with the Phoenix Coyotes, but if you're not producing, you're not worth much.
Yeah.
So if you do produce in these big cities, you know, the reward is much higher.
Best defenseman that played in front of you.
Oh, wow.
I know. I bet when you were in Winnipeg, no one bothered you because of Big Buff, Dustin Buffalo.
He was one of my favorites. He was one of my favorites.
Absolutely loved him.
You know, poor guy. His partner was Toby Enstrom, and poor Buff, like, he would do so much stinking skating that he couldn't. Once a puck would get to the D zone, he would stand in front, and Toby Enstrom would be going left to right, left to right, left to right. He was absolutely amazing, though.
That is a pairing that I still talk about to this day as far as protecting your offensive defenseman with a guy like Dustin Byfuglien.
Yeah. I mean, but I still see his hits.
Yeah.
And I still can replay them. We go way back because Buff, he moved to Chicago around that year I took off. He came to Chicago under the same coach and played for the youth organization that I was playing for. So we had known each other, and one of my favorite players to watch play the game. His reads, another great one. Suter, growing up playing at the NTDP program, you always knew what you got. I was a big one for reliable defensemen. I loved them. I cherish guys like that. I know there's a million. Shea Weber.
I was going to bring
Weber
him up.
in Montreal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
what a shot!
A blessing to play with the guy. Great shot. We talk about a shot, but he was the guy that, I was grateful that I earned my veteran stripes by that point, because every practice he would shoot on me from the red line. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah.
You can imagine, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I look at your career and I look at the defensemen you've played with, some amazing stories, and truly some amazing. I was actually looking because you it looks like you just missed PK Subban.
I did just miss PK, but I think about Florida. I had Brian Campbell, Willie Mitchell. I would talk about Ford. I had Yager. That was different. And I had him at the beginning of my career and then at the end of his career.
Yeah.
But some great players.
That's a great poll by you, Al. No one talks about Brian Campbell and what an amazing D-man he was, especially for his size.
You know what? We still stay in touch. Soupy's a good friend. Living in Chicago, I'm from Chicago. He married a Chicago gal, and you know what? The way he played the game, he just made it so effortless. And I don't know if he ever got hit. He probably, other than that one time, there's a hit in Buffalo. Maybe he was in Buffalo. He got hit really bad. But other than that, it was just so smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So smooth.
Yeah. So don't want to talk too many on the ice stars with you, but must be fun watching Jake Ottinger play.
I look at this team and I remind people how fortunate that we are to have a goaltender like him at the age that he is, what he's able to do. You're nothing without your goalie. I know that's coming from a former goalie, but it starts back there. Whether he gives up 5 one night or nothing the next, it doesn't matter, because you know what you're going to get, and you know what he provides your team each and every single day. So we're lucky to have him, and I can't. It's always the next game you want to see, or what he's going to bring, or what he's going to do, and it's even better that he's an American-born player, a USA hockey player, and continue to feed that pipeline.
During your playing career, did you have one person that designed your mask, or multiple people?
I had one person. So when I went to the University of Michigan, it was Ray Bishop. And Bishop Designs was the guy that I stuck with throughout my whole career. I remember arriving to the University of Michigan. I still have my first helmet from the University of Michigan up in my office. Oh, I love it. But it was your standard football helmet, right? With the stripes coming across the top and something simple. But then the next year, Ray goes, you know what? Yeah, why don't you let me spice it up a little bit? And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever you think. I'm not an artist. I don't know. I come in the locker room that day, and Ian Hume, our former equipment manager, who's passed on, says, "Oh, Red's not going to like this one." And I'm this 18-year-old kid. I'm so nervous. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what's Red going to say?" Because it recreated the Wolverine, or the stripes on the helmet with a Wolverine face, and it was, to me, it was awesome. And Red didn't say a word as long as I stopped the puck, and since then I stuck with that kind of, whether it was in Winnipeg where it was a bomber jet shark face on the front, or some kind of creature always on the helmet, it was all Ray.
Nice. Did you go to the national championship this past year, since you're so big blue?
Football or hockey?
Listen, they're on fire right now for athletics.
You know what? I didn't make it down. I still talk about it. I get back there every now and then, back to Yost. I got a 9-year-old boy who's growing into the game of hockey, and we're right at the point where I keep saying, I got to get this guy back. I got to get him over there, and it's a special place, that's for sure.
Yeah. Circling back to the reason we had you on, if people want to get involved, how can they help you as far as locally with community outreach for the Dallas Stars? How can they get involved?
You know what? For us, it's about being a great fan, right? That's a great question. It's, we've launched initiatives here within the city of Dallas to grow the game within the city of Dallas. Very proud of the Future Stars initiative, which I think we're at like 20 centers, maybe 20 more than 20 centers with boys and girls clubs, Dallas Parks and Recreation, where allows kids to grow up playing hockey, or provides access and opportunity. They play ball in a ball hockey league. You never thought that would be possible living down here in Dallas.
Right.
It's cool. It's about, we don't care if you become an NHLer. We don't care we just want you to know that the Dallas Stars are there for you, and that this is your team. And as a kid, it provides another option, right? It doesn't have to be just football or basketball or baseball. Why not hockey? And we want to grow within this community because we are a part of this community. And, the youth, I see myself in them. I grew up, a large part of my time was at the YMCA and at the rec centers, and being shaped by those coaches and by those games that they played. And so to have a team like the Stars growing the game together, I think that's what we do. And a big part of that is getting kids to come to games.
Yeah.
So when you're at a game, I think just embracing everybody around you and enjoying the game together. And I think that's the biggest way we're going to grow this all together.
A rose congre on me, my friend.
I love it. We
will meet at Havana Cafe.
I've got the Cuban City in Carrollton, which is a connection to the family. It's a coffee shop and a bakery. And those pastelitos de guayaba, these pastries, they take me back.
Oh, wow.
So that one will be on me.
Okay. I am in on that. Everyone told me that you would be an amazing interview. You have exceeded those expectations. You're a beast. We are so lucky to have you in Dallas-Fort Worth. Thank you, my friend. Hopefully this is the first of a few. I will take you up on that offer so we can talk hockey. Thank you for taking up all this time. It's great to know all the great things you're doing in the DFW community, and it's awesome to look back on what was a terrific career.
Thank you for taking me down memory lane, and thank you for being such a big supporter and amplifier of everything we do, Spitz. We can't say it enough, and anytime.
And you need to contact Dylan Reese and said he was mentioned on a podcast.
I'm sending it to him today. I love it.
Oh, that's great. That is the great Al Montoya, the Director of Community Outreach for the Dallas Stars. And you've been listening to Spits and Suds right here on 105.3 The Fan. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. Have a great day, everyone.